The following is a conversation with Leslie Hamilton. Leslie is a marathon swimmer based in New York City and enjoys training and competing in the iconic waterways surrounding her home. She has traveled all over the U.S. to participate in open water races and solo swims with distances of 10 kilometers and over, including the 21-mile length of Lake Tahoe, a 40-mile stage swim in Arizona called SCAR, and the beautiful Lake Memphremagog in Vermont in Canada. She feels most connected, though, to the Hudson River, Verrazano Narrows, and Brighton Beach, Coney Island region. In 2020, she swam the 20 Bridges, which is a 28-mile circumnavigation around Manhattan Island. In 2022, she completed all 7 stages of the 120-mile 8 Bridges Hudson River swim and set the record for the 17-mile Rose Pitonof Swim from Midtown Manhattan to Coney Island Pier. She recently completed a 36.5-mile circumnavigation of Staten Island in July 2023, becoming the second person to do so and the first woman to ever attempt and complete the route. We'd like to thank our sponsors, Native Pass Supplements, Lombardi Chiropractic, Home Sweet Home Cleaning, and Thin Line Martial Arts. If you are enjoying this content, I ask that you support these companies in the description and take advantage of the enticing discount they're providing our listeners by using our code COMO15. That's COMO 15. I thank each and every one of you for being on this journey with us. Now, please enjoy the show. All right, Leslie, I want to talk now about the training that you did leading into this last challenge, this swim adventure. Can you tell me about, how do you train for such a long and enduring event? Obviously, you can't train 40, 50 hours a week in a pool. So what does that look like?
Right. So I would say a normal week for me, especially during the winter, I had to train a lot in pools just because it's a little bit too cold to go out there and do a long swim in the ocean. But during the week, I try to swim an hour and a half to 2 hours, probably about 4 times a week. And then on the weekends is when I would do my longer swims. So I practice with a masters team here in New York City called Red Tide Masters. And during the week, I swim with them. So I'll do like an hour and a half with them. And sometimes then after I would go to another pool to actually get in just a little bit longer of a swim. And then on the weekends, they have a Saturday practice that has 2 sessions. So it's 3 hours of swimming in the pool. And then even after that, I would maybe do another hour or 2 on my own. So weekends would be about 4 to 5 hours a day. And then weekdays is just kind of whatever I can fit in around work. And then I have an open water coach on the side, Charlotte Bryn, who I know you've interviewed for other podcasts. And she really helps me just kind of keep my goals in vision and kind of moderating the amount of yardage that I'm doing and modifying if I'm going into kind of a rest week. And then just encouraging me during some of the ramp up weeks where you are looking at, 50,000 plus yards a week. I think I topped out around actually 60,000 this training cycle leading up to Staten Island. But yeah, we do the best we can to just kind of manage with the time we have, since I do have a full-time job. I work as an accountant, a CPA at a private equity firm. So that can be demanding as well, but I'm just really flexible about my schedule and I just try to get in what I can, but it's definitely not a perfect process.
Oh yeah, no, I know balancing training and life is something all of us find challenging, to say the least. And are you strength training on top of the 50,000 yards in the pool each week? Do you do any kind of weight training or mobility training?
Yeah. So I have some really good shoulder prehab exercises. I do a lot of stuff, especially for my bicep tendons, just because that's a pretty big area of pain whenever you're really pushing yourself in rotator cuff exercises. So I do a lot of resistance bands for that during the season, just because I need something a little bit more low impact versus some of the really heavy weightlifting I find will impact my shoulders to the point where I might be too sore to really ramp up the volume. And then, yeah, I also do some Pilates just for core stabilization. Now that I'm here in the off season, though, I have gone back to heavy lifting. I really focus on just the back and shoulders, especially a lot of pull up focused training. I am 6'1", so it's a little bit difficult to do a pull up with my very long levers, but I've been able to work up to it in recent years. So that's kind of my miniature goal whenever I'm not training really hard for open water swimming.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. Yeah, that's good to hear. Because a lot of times I talk to people in like, a specialty field, like for yours it's swimming, but they neglect strength training, mobility. They just will train within their one sport or demand, 5, 6, 7 days a week, and over time, obviously, from a health perspective, it's hard to stay balanced and healthy. So the fact that you're doing that, I think that's great. I think it'll extend your career even longer. I think that's very smart. I know that you took on, I did some reading here, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you did a training swim in North Carolina for 10 hours. And then you did 1 mile every hour for 24 hours in Pennsylvania. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, those are kind of my big training weekend goals as I was ramping up for this. And in the past, this season was a little bit unique in the fact that normally I would have done like longer official marathon swims leading up to this 14 and a half hour swim. But just with the time parameters that I have, I'm actually getting married in about 3 weeks. So I didn't really plan any other big swims. This was really the only big swim. So in North Carolina, I did do a 10-hour. I actually had wanted more like 11 or 12, but what ended up happening was we got there in early May and there was a bunch of runoff in the river that I was supposed to train in. And it was actually too dirty to get to get all of that time in. So we ended up having to do a very, very quick pivot. And we found another lake in North Carolina. We went to Lake Norman and we were able to get in. We had to find a new boat actually because they wouldn't transfer the one boat we had from the river to the lake. And yeah, we found a new boat and I was able to still get in 10 hours. My family helped me. They were driving the boat and they would feed me from the boat. And it was a really good exercise. So I would say mentally it's a little bit more difficult because you're not really going from point A to point B. You're just kind of swimming in circles to get your hours in. So that part was really mentally challenging, but I was really happy to have my family with me. My mom actually fed me a couple of really interesting feeds, which was fun to experiment with. Being the mom she is, she always wants to feed me. But I actually had like a pimento cheese sandwich in the middle, which was surprising to me that it actually sat very well on my stomach. I tried it towards the end because I was a little bit nervous since I do tend to have blander foods when I'm trying to nourish. But yeah, the 10-hour swim was great. And at the end of it, after all the training that I had done, I didn't actually feel super fatigued. It was just a really good confidence booster and just a really good, step in my training to get ready for my bigger challenge.
Mhm. Yeah, and then you
Yeah, and
also
then
the Pennsylvania one,
oh
right?
yeah, go ahead.
Oh no, yeah, the
Yes, yeah,
Pennsylvania one was very intriguing, Leslie, because I know Charlotte did. I think it was the same challenge in Florida. I talked to her on the podcast about that. 1 mile every hour for 24 hours. To me, that's fascinating because I do at the end of this talk, we're talking about a challenge that I'm doing in the Adirondacks, where I'm swimming 1 mile in 47 different lakes. And so 1 mile for me, I'll do two sometimes in a day. And that's not an easy day. And you did 24 1 mile swims on the hour. Was that easy for you or was that challenging? Like, just tell me about that.
yeah. It was interesting. I think in some ways it was more challenging than I expected, and then in other ways it was easier. So I did that right about a month after I did my training swim in North Carolina. So plenty of time to kind of take a rest after that and then rebuild and keep my aerobic shape and everything. And this was really more of a mental challenge, I would say. Going into it, I recognized that the big thing that I wanted to focus on was the sleep deprivation aspect. Because going into Staten Island, it did take me 14 and a half hours, but further out, before they had a better prediction about exactly what the tides and currents were looking like, it could have been like an 18 plus hour swim for me, just depending on the conditions of the day. So with that knowledge, I really treated this like this would be a really good opportunity for me to practice just staying awake from a long period of time and kind of just swimming through whatever gets thrown at me. So we started at, I think it was either 7 p.m. or 8 p.m. I know Charlotte's challenge, she said she started in the morning and swam through the night. It was interesting with kind of the different start time. I think it was, I actually liked that it was starting there because we kind of got to swim into where it was dark outside. We were inside the whole time, but we could see plenty of windows and everything. So swimming through the dark. And then once you got to the morning, it was, even just a little bit less than halfway through. So a lot of the kind of changing, what was changing outside, I kind of had to block out a little bit. I would say in the dark, I actually love to swim in the dark. So that was pretty fun for me. And then I didn't really have any caffeine until about halfway through. I waited to have the caffeine until I saw the sunrise, which was really a good choice on my point, I think, because it really just felt like it was the start of a new day. And I was able to kind of block out the fact that I hadn't slept that night because I felt a lot more alert after having the caffeine for the first time in the middle of it, because of course at that time you run into a slump after a while. So I was really, really proud of myself because my times from the start to the finish only varied by about a minute and 20 seconds. So, and I was actually especially nervous because I thought I had taken that out a little bit too fast, but I was able to hold on. Yeah, I mean, there were certain miles where I maybe raced somebody beside me, and then there were others where I just told myself I was going to hold the steady pace. And it worked out really well for me. It was mostly comfortable throughout the whole time. Whenever I would get in the water, we had like maybe the 20-second countdown. And when you would first get in the water, you'd be like, oh my gosh, I'm doing this again. But then as soon as you started moving, it really didn't feel that bad. It was just easy to kind of block out what was going on around me and just kind of enjoy the swimming aspect of it.
That's so
So yeah, it was
cool.
really, really good.
Yeah, what were your times, Leslie? Like your average time on the mile for those?
So for 1,650 yards, I think I started out at like 22 something, and then I never went above like 23:45.
Man, that is
So it was really,
that's amazing. That's that, and it's in a pool, but that's fast. To give you an idea, like with open water where I am, my fastest this season was 36 minutes, but I'm probably realistically like 42 to 48 for open water 1 mile. So yeah, you are cruising.
yeah, it was really fun. I mean, I think you get into that zone, and then after a while, like as long as you're just able to kind of control your breathing, and I really, really focused, especially on the end with my core and really just rotating from my core because I felt like that was where I was going to get the most power with the least effort. And yeah, it
So,
was it was overall pretty fun, comfortable.
that's awesome. One more swim question, and then I want to get into some environmental things because you and I are very similar in some respects with the waterways and clean water and all of this. But before I get into that, question I have to ask is when you're swimming open water, do you think about like lake monsters or what's lurking beneath you ever? Because um, I do, not a lot, and it doesn't affect the swim, but it's definitely there on my mind. And I know other people, that do open water swims and they talk about that, like lake monsters. And I think Charlotte actually talks about Lake Memphremagog. There's a monster there, maybe, or something. Like, do you ever think about that stuff?
Yeah, yeah, it definitely always crosses my mind. Memphrey is a very friendly monster in Lake Memphremagog. I've swam there quite a few times, and it's a wonderful lake. I would say for me, I actually think a little bit less about it when I'm doing a long swim with a large crew, simply because I know that if something were to happen, people that I have on my boat, I just 100% trust and know that they have my back. And if there was a shark or something else dangerous, I know that they would be able to point it out to me. And even if I were to get hurt, I know I wouldn't, my life would not be in danger. So I just kind of let go of that whenever I'm doing a longer swim with a bunch of support crew. I will say, so I swim out at Brighton Beach in New York City, which is the beach next to it is Coney Island, which everybody's probably a little bit more familiar with. But I do loops there. So we swim parallel to shore. We start at Brighton Beach. I'll go east to the Coney Island Pier and then back. And I would say for those, I do get a little bit more nervous about what's in the water, just because while there's a lot of people out there swimming with me, and while I have my toe float every time I try to do a training swim on my own, it's just a little bit more unknown about what might be there. I'm always cautious. I never really get panicked, but it is something I think of occasionally. But it really just you kind of also have to just rely on statistics and the fact that there were lots of or more reports of shark attacks at like Rockaway this year or some of the beaches out in Long Island. But where we are, there's really not reports of that. So I think it's nice to have that kind of statistic in the back of my mind that the chances of something like that happening are very, very slim. I have had a shark encounter before, which was pretty scary, but it was in South Carolina. So not where I normally swim, but
What did it attack you, or did you just see one? Tell me about that.
well, yeah, I guess I should probably clarify. I can't really just leave that there and bury the lead. But I was at Folly Beach, South Carolina back in 2021 doing just some training. And I was pretty close to the pier there. So, like in a pretty populated area. And I guess maybe there were fishermen. But so I'm swimming with a friend, and I suddenly feel something bump me. And I feel something kind of sharp, which I now realize was probably the fin of it. But the idea being that sharks they don't really want to eat you, obviously. And I think a lot of the times they're kind of a little bit stupid if they do try to bite you, because they bump you to see if you're food. And then if they've decided, okay, you might be food, then they're going to bite you. But if they were to do that, then as soon as they do that, they'd be like, ugh, this is human. I don't want this. Um, so I got bumped. I asked my friend kind of as a joke, oh, is that a shark? And then she said, yes, we should swim to shore immediately. So at the time I tried to be calm, but I was definitely panicking. I was kicking my legs. I was swimming as fast as I could. I'm pretty sure I did kick the shark because I felt something pretty hard behind my feet. I mean, it was really, really terrifying. I was swimming really quickly and I was running out of breath. And because it was low tide, the shore looked like it was really far away. So I'm like, oh my gosh, this is it. They're gonna catch me. And then like a wave comes up behind me and I skin my knees on the sand because I was really just swimming on a sandbar for like the last 30 seconds that I was freaking out, and it would have been fine. But scary, scary situation. But once again, you think about statistics, and it made me feel a little bit better. And I did get in the water the day after and I swam a little bit, although I was a little bit freaked out.
How far did you have to swim to shore from when the panic started back to safety?
So it was a lot further than I thought because of it being low tide. So I was probably only, and I don't really think I was ever really in danger because we took the precautions of swimming directly to shore. I probably had about like 100 yards before I could have stood, but I just didn't realize it, which kind of it added an element of humor a little bit whenever the wave came up behind me and I skinned my knees.
Well, you did a lot better with that situation than I would have, Leslie. That's for sure. I probably would have had a heart attack. I get scared of like a snapping turtle or a loon, like coming up and jabbing me with their beak. Like I think of like pretty minor things, and it doesn't consume me, but it's definitely there. A shark, yeah, that would do it for me. But you're right. It's a statistics thing. And I know there are thousands of swimmers that swim in the ocean successfully all the time for many years, and there's no problem. So statistics are definitely on your side. I
Right.
want to switch.
Scared, but at the same time, I think overall you weigh the risk and then you decide to swim at your own risk.
Yeah, for sure. Back pain, headaches, and discomfort plague the majority of humans walking around each day. Chiropractic care can be the solution to feeling your best. I know for me personally, it has had a huge impact on how I feel day to day. The problem is that many people fear going to the chiropractor and getting their first adjustment. The team at Lombardi Chiropractic are the best of the best, a team that I've worked with for over 12 years. Visit their website at lombardichiropractic.com, and when you call, let them know you are a listener of the Co-Movement Gym podcast. The majority of supplements on the market are junk and a waste of money. Lack of regulation allows these companies to sell cardboard and a pill, and they get away with it. It's important to purchase your supplements from a company you trust, which for us at Co-Movement is Native Path Supplements. Shop their products at nativepath.com and use code COMO15 for a nice discount at checkout. That's COMO 15. Law enforcement officers have one tough job. While some calls may be routine, many are not, oftentimes putting officers in unpredictable situations. Thin Line Martial Arts is an apparel company that promotes defensive tactics training for officers so that they can be equipped to safely handle a hand-to-hand combat situation. Purchasing apparel from Thin Line Martial Arts promotes this message and allows more officers to attend training. Go to thinlinemartialarts.com and use code COMO15, that's COMO 15, to receive a 15% discount on us. Did you know a clean house reduces anxiety, increases your productivity, improves sleep, and decreases stress? Yes, all of those health benefits just from having a clean house. The problem is that no one finds cleaning fun, except for the great folks at Home Sweet Home Cleaning. Mention the Co-Movement Gym podcast and receive 20% off deep cleans for all clients who sign on using their reoccurring services and start enjoying a clean house today. All right, now I want to switch over now to a topic you and I are both passionate about. We've never talked about it together, but just in reading, some articles about you, I want to just read a few things here. So the Hudson River was known for many years to be New York City's sewer. I know that the water quality there has improved drastically over the years. I also know I'm friends with professional fly fishermen. I like to fish myself. And I know up in upstate New York, the majority of fish are not safe to consume in our waterways anymore, which is quite depressing. And so I consider myself an environmentalist, conservationist, as like a hobbyist. And I take a lot of pride in that. We have a small farm. I'm really in tune with nature, and I love fishing and eating fish. I like swimming in clean water. So my question, I guess, and it's somewhat of a big one, but what factors improved the water quality in the Hudson over, I don't know how many years, 10, 20 years? And then what is your perspective on the future of cleaning up the waterways? I'll just speak for the Northeast because that's where we are. But can you talk about that?
Yeah, definitely. I would say my big experience is really just, and knowledge is really just firsthand of actually swimming in the Hudson. I last year did swim from Catskill to the Verrazano Bridge in the Hudson River, and not once did I have a concern about, oh, this water is unsafe to swim in and I may get sick. I think the threat could always maybe be there, but from my firsthand experience, I've never had that sort of experience swimming in those bodies of water. And from what I know, it just sounds like so far a lot of environmental groups have really helped improve the water quality. For example, Riverkeeper here in New York City, the Hudson River chapter, they recently stopped a bunch of waste being dumped up closer by that nuclear power plant, just a little bit past like the Bear Mountain Bridge. So that was a very big win for our water quality. And yeah, I think just in the recent decades, as we've become more aware of just how much it does harm our waterways, we've refrained. Um, and I think a lot of it also is just there's a stigma behind it. I think it's a lot cleaner than how it's portrayed. I know in some of the other interviews that I gave, or I was on WNBC New York for an evening news segment, and I actually had said a lot of things about how it had improved in the last decade or so. But they cut it so that it was more a focus on, oh, this water is gross. And then they did their own research and, you take it a little bit out of context and then suddenly everybody's asking, oh, why don't I have a bunch of diseases after swimming in all of this polluted water? And I mean, that's not to say that there's not a risk because I definitely am aware. Like you said, the fish aren't safe to eat upstate. I would say in the Arthur Kill, especially on Staten Island. So that's the whole western side that borders Jersey as well. That water is not actually rated for recreational swimming. For me, I feel comfortable in that water because I am an experienced open water swimmer. I would imagine I do have at least a little bit of maybe kind of immunity built up after having swam in these waters. And also, when I imagine recreational swimming, I imagine somebody that's bobbing up and down and, they're maybe not as great of a swimmer and they accidentally swallow a bunch of water and then it suddenly is in their system. And for me, that doesn't normally happen. I mean, I would say that for most experienced swimmers. I think in windy conditions, we all end up swallowing a little bit of water. But for the most part, I think we're confident swimmers. It's not going to be as detrimental. But yeah, I think the risk is there in the Arthur Kill, but overall, I would say that we're moving towards marked improvement.
Yeah, that's good to hear you say that. Because I know without healthy bodies of water, humans can't be healthy or live long, right? We're put it quite simple. We need healthy, clean water. And so, yeah, I think I would say I'm optimistic in these companies cleaning up the waterways. I hope that they're really looking at like the sewage systems and like septic tanks and stuff, for example, and updating them. So, for example, like in the Adirondack Park that I spent a lot of time in, a lot of the camps there are old and they have like leach fields that maybe weren't installed properly or tanks that have really just rotted out and they think it's still there or functioning, but what's happening is the sewage is just leaking into the soil and then into the water. I haven't had any personal negative experiences in the lakes that I've swam, which is quite a high number. But I know there's those concerns. And so like down in Florida, I visit Ponce Inlet quite a bit. We have family down there. And I did some research on there's an inlet. I don't know what river it is. I forget what it is. I should know this, but it leads direct from Ponce Inlet directly into the ocean. And I think it was maybe 20 years ago or so, there was millions of gallons of sewage that had leaked from like some industrial plant into that river. And, there's long-term side effects to that. And so I hope that we're looking at those sewage issues and also that these companies are stepping up their game in terms of really creating clean water for us so you and I can swim more in it.
Yes, definitely. And yeah, if you even look in like reports in recent years of just how New York City rates the water quality, and honestly, I'd probably botch the rating system, but they had a very infographic map of just the 5 boroughs and just color coding about, you know, I guess there's like the basic like nothing can survive there, um, fish survival, but like not rated for swimming, which is basically what Arthur Kill has been in the past. And then you have our public beaches that are maybe like in the yellow zone where most of the time they're fine, but you have occasional instances, especially after like heavier storms where it might be unsafe. But most of it is rated swimmable. And I think that that perception is maybe a little bit clouded just because every time something bad does happen or every time there's some crazy report, then of course everybody's going to be cautious. But I think the angle of the improvement is just not being as covered.
So moving on, do you have any tips for listeners that may be inspired by this conversation or your adventures that want to start doing some open water swimming? Do you have any tips for them?
Yeah, I would say just especially as you're starting out, whatever body of water that you're swimming in, I would definitely always be checking online to just see if there are any alerts about water quality or, like I said, like after a heavy storm or, any sewage issues, like Josh was saying. In the ocean, especially, you should also be looking at any kind of rip current warnings or high surf warnings, especially as a beginner, just because that's not safe to swim in, obviously. I guess just kind of circling back to the question, I would say as you're starting out, just make sure that you're aware of where you're swimming. Take it slow. There's no shame in starting out and just doing a quick little dip and getting used to your surroundings. I know for me, even sometimes when I'm training in a body of water that I'm not familiar with, I'll do maybe just a quick acclimation swim first, where I'm not really worried about distance or time, just to kind of get my bearings because it can be uncomfortable if you're not used to where you're going. So my advice would just be to take it slow, and then once you feel a little bit more comfortable and you're following all of the safety precautions, so that's not swimming too far out if you're in an ocean, swimming with a buddy, having your toe float. If you're going long, making sure that you're carrying some kind of nutrition so you don't get into like a situation. But I think as soon as you have all the safety basics down and you have that level of comfort, then I think the best thing you can do is just kind of build up and figure out what works best for you.
That's great advice. That's great advice. I know we have members here at our facility that, have talked about maybe swimming more and diving into the many lakes that we have in this area. And so I don't know really what quite to say to people because I think that a lot of people need to learn how to swim correctly first, right? First and foremost. But then, like, open water swimming is another level above that because there's other factors, more difficult than a pool. But yeah, no, that's great advice, Leslie. Lastly, here, I want to tell you about a challenge that I'm doing, and maybe this is something that you're interested in. I'm doing an Adirondack Laker 47 challenge. Okay. They call it a 47 Laker challenge where you have to swim 1 mile or over, no wetsuit, unaided in 47 Adirondack lakes. And that's the challenge. Okay. And so I'm in my third year. I've done 29 of them so far. And you can do any lakes you want. It's just 1 mile unaided, 1 mile straight, no wetsuit. And my buddy Bob and I are doing it. And so it's been an amazing experience. But I would be very interested if you or Charlotte or like Alyssa Godsky, I think she's up in New Hampshire, tackled that challenge to see what you could do the 47 lakes in. What is your thoughts on that?
I think that sounds like a great challenge. It's so exciting. There's just so many bodies of water in so little time, it feels like. But yeah, I bet if we wanted to do that, we could just make a week out of it and travel to different lakes. That sounds like a great vacation.
So do you
Yeah,
think
I mean,
this is funny? Do you think, Leslie, that you could do it in a week? 47 lakes, essentially 47 miles, that would be not too bad for you?
I think so. I think I could probably break that up in a week because that's 7 days a week, and you're looking at, I don't know, like 7 miles a day, um, ish. Yeah, I think that's probably pretty doable considering some of the stage swims that I've tackled before. But when it comes to stage swims or anything like that, it's really just about the logistics too. I feel like so much of it can be derailed if you don't have the proper kind of protocol and just the kind of go with the flow attitude as well. I know out in Scar in Arizona, which is another swim that I know Charlotte has done as well. It's four lakes over 4 days for 40 miles. It's just outside of Phoenix in the Salt River. And logistically, there's always just something every year that'll throw you for a loop. I've done it twice. And yeah, the race director, Kent Nicholas, is also really great. He has been doing this for many years, and logistically to move, it tends to be like 30 or 40 swimmers with their kayaks over this 40-mile stretch in the desert. There's been road closures that have derailed us getting to certain places. One of the toughest lake, there's not really good cell service in the area. I've swam through like a reverse current in a lake before, which just so many wild things that you just have to be prepared for. So I think like something like your Adirondack challenge would be, I'm sure it is exactly the same. You just really have to kind of be prepared for anything and just go with the flow.
Well, if you decide to tackle that at any point, let me know. That would be so cool. I would join. I wouldn't be doing 7 miles a day, but I would come up and support you for sure. I'm curious. Charlotte's invited me up to the swimming hole. I think we only live like 5 hours apart, and I definitely want to go up there with my friend Bob, that also swims with me, and just hang out with Charlotte and do some swimming. I'm curious, I would love to swim with you, Charlotte, myself, and my buddy Bob. He does triathlons sometime in the Adirondacks. I think maybe next summer. Was that something that you'd be up for, making a cool trip up and do that?
Yeah, definitely. I'm still kind of working out my summer plans for next year, but they involve a lot of swimming. So any little getaways that would be good for training and to meet you in person, hear more about your challenge, and that sounds wonderful. If we could get that organized.
All right, sweet. I'll remember that. Well, we'll wrap this up. Leslie, thank you so much for taking the time. I'm inspired by you. I'll be following your adventures, and I'm hoping we can inspire listeners listen in on this conversation. And I thank you for your time.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, Josh. I just hope anybody that out there that's listening is just able to, safely push themselves, because I really didn't think that this was going to be what I ended up doing. I actually thought I was going to swim around Manhattan and that was going to be like my crowning achievement, biggest thing. And then after that, I would just stop swimming. But that hasn't been the case. And it's been such a wild, wonderful adventure these past few years.
Yeah, that's what it's about. So we will put your Instagram handle in the description, okay? And people can reach out, ask questions to you, and follow you, okay?
Absolutely. Yeah. Any questions anyone has, I'd love to answer. Because like I said, it's a little bit of a crazy extreme sport. And I hope it can appeal to a broader audience and be a little bit less intimidating.
Definitely. Well, thank you, Leslie.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Josh.
One last message. I ask that you please check out our show sponsors: Lombardi Chiropractic, Home Sweet Home Cleaning, Native Pass Supplements, and Thin Line Martial Arts. Their links are in the description. Not only do these companies produce outstanding products and services, but they're providing an enticing discount to all listeners who use code COMO15. That's COMO15 at checkout or when you give them a call.